forget all the stuff that your amazing teachers in middle school taught you. Remember it. Build upon your knowledge. Let's keep going together. Hi there, welcome back to the Caffeinated Classroom. If this is your first time here, my name is Marie. I'm a high school English teacher in San Diego, California. I am currently teaching grades 9 and 10, but I have taught all 4 of the high school grades. Today, we have quite a treat for you. This is a collaboration with Darren from EdTech by Darren and Fernanda from That One Happy Classroom, and we are bringing you 3 different teachers teaching one lesson. Not just 3 different teachers teaching one lesson, but 3 different teachers teaching 3 completely different grades. One general idea, one skill, and how we would differentiate it depending upon our age group, the standard that is actually like the way a standard is worded for our age group, and just like age and skill level appropriateness. So today the standard that we are looking at is a reading information standard, and the way that it reads for the 9th and 10th grade standard is as follows. It is reading for information 9 through 10.2, and it reads, determine a central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course of the text, including how it emerges and is shaped and refined by specific details. Provide an objective summary of the text. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about how I would teach this skill, right, of determining a central idea of an informational text or an expository text, how to break down the text and find the small little pieces that then add together and the ideas emerge from there, and finding those key details. Exactly what I would do with my students, what I have done with my students, and in fact, what I plan to do next week. I'm going to show you guys an article that I'm going to be doing with my 9th graders next week sometime, and exactly how we're going to break it down, what I'm going to give them for guided reading, or like how I'm going to guide their reading, how we are going to annotate, and then how we are going to bring that into one big synthesized idea at the end. So let's jump into it. Okay, so the text that we're going to be looking at right now is entitled, What is Confirmation Bias? Wishful Thinking. And it was actually originally posted on psychologytoday.com. I'm just looking at a little printout of it. That in 2015, April 23rd of 2015, the way that we're going to be using this in my classroom is that we are in the middle of a To Kill a Mockingbird unit within my 9th grade English class. So we are going to talk about confirmation bias this week, because I've been asking my students to do a whole lot of reflecting upon their own natural biases and tendencies, and asking themselves, well, why do I think this, and do I agree with this in light of finding out more information? So that whole long explanation is to just kind of explain to you what we've been doing in class leading up to using this text. This text is going to be part, obviously, like I said, of a much larger study, and we're going to be accessing some of the background knowledge and some of the prior discussions that we've had in class before we even get into this text. Always, 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 I want to make sure if I'm giving students a cold piece of writing, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, I want to make sure that they have some nugget of connection to it in some way, so that they're not just going at it going, what on earth is this? So everybody would get their own copy, and what we would do, and you can already see that the margins are a bit larger. I don't know if you can tell, but English teachers out there, you can probably tell. These margins are wider than normal. And so that is because we are going to do what is called a say-do chart right on this text. The very first time, they're not allowed to hold anything in their hands but the paper, and they just do one read through. Read for information, read for understanding, right? First read through. After the first read through, everybody puts it down. I want them to do kind of like a little think, pair, share. Turn to a partner. What is the 1-sentence summary of the big idea that you got from this, right? Turn to a partner. Okay, here's the big takeaway I have. Here's the big takeaway you have. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're different. Sometimes they kind of end up coming up with something together. That's it. So far, we haven't written anything on the paper whatsoever. We're just trying to come up with one idea, and that's already starting to get at our standard, which is to determine a central idea. Now we need to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty and figure out how those key details, how those small little parts create the central idea, right? How they all contribute to one emerging thought. So now what we're going to do is we are going to number our paragraphs, and we'll go through, in fact, I'm going to do this with you guys right now. We have numbered over in the margin all of the paragraphs. It's just to give us like a frame of reference as we are talking both in pairs or small groups and as a large group. And I normally want my students to have 2 different colors of highlighter or a pen and a pencil or 2 colored pencils or something like that, just to differentiate between a couple of different things that we're going to be annotating. Basically, on one side in one margin, we're going to be writing down notes, and we're going to be using one color for things that the author is saying. What is the message, right? So over here at the top, I'm gonna write say, and that's gonna be my blue color. And then over on the other side, I'm gonna have a contrasting color because I'm going to be writing do. And I'll explain to you what I mean by this. We're going with pink because why wouldn't we go with pink, right? So, as I read through, I am going to read my first paragraph, and I'll read it out loud to you guys as well. And I'm going to be looking only for one of the things. I'm gonna start with just my blue. I'm looking for things that this paragraph says. What is the content of the paragraph? Okay. And it reads, imagine that you have tried to reach a friend with whom you have an ambivalent relationship by phone or email, leaving messages, yet have not received a call in return. In a situation like this, it is easy to jump to conclusions in an intuitive manner that your friend wants to avoid you. The danger, of course, is that you leave this belief unchecked and start to act as though it were true. Okay, so what I am looking for in this read through of this paragraph, or what I am highlighting or underlining for, are phrases or sentences that are going to give me the main idea of just this little paragraph. If we're doing this for the very first time, this is the first time I've asked them to do like say and do on a text, I would probably have them do it with a partner just so that they have a little bit of comfort of somebody else to be with, you know? So I have underlined just a couple of little things, and I will show you. So what I've underlined is that it is easy to jump to conclusions, and that the danger in jumping to these conclusions is that you'll start to like make these things seem true to yourself. So over on the side, now that I've underlined, that is not quite enough. I now need to synthesize my thoughts into a couple of little words, little note in the margin. Nothing huge because I only have this much space, and I try to make my students limit themselves a little bit because then they'll start just like rewriting the article, and that is the opposite of what you want them to do. You want them to use economy of words and synthesize the information. So teaching this, I would do a couple of things. I would either use my document camera and have this projected up on the board, or I would have this projected up on the board and just use my markers and mark it up right up there. If it's something I'm gonna hold on to and maybe I wanna take pictures of and then like post on my Google Classroom later on, I would just write it on the page. Now that I have done this is what this first paragraph is saying. It's saying that jumping to conclusions leads to misinformation. Now I wanna ask myself, what in the way that this is said and what is being said, what is this content and the way that it is expressed doing? This is the hard part, by the way. This is the really hard part for students. So I know that this is trying to gain a connection with me, the reader, and I can see that it is trying to gain a connection with me, the reader. So I've got, what is it saying? What is it doing? First one, I would definitely do a think aloud where I am saying, well, here's what I'm seeing, so that they have a really good model. And then I would have students work in their pairs to do the next couple, and then maybe as a table to do the next 4, and then maybe as one big group again, so that we're kind of like one big group. They can see me doing it myself. They work with one other person. They work with a few other people. And then it gets bigger and bigger where we're all coming together, and it'll go faster and faster as they're practicing these little say and do analytical skills as they go through the text. So that is kind of like step 1 of, well, that's like step 2. So step 1 was the first read through and just saying to a partner, here's what I think this was about. I would ask for a few volunteers to tell me, you know, what did you guys talk about? And then we would kind of come to a consensus of like a sentence. This is what we think it's about. Might write it down, might not write it down, might just have it in our heads. Then we would break it down paragraph by paragraph. What is this paragraph saying? And then in turn, what is that doing for the reader, right? What purpose or what effect does it have? And then at the very end, after we have all of these say and all of these do's, I would say at the very bottom of the text, there is space to actually come together with some sort of a synthesis. Have them write it right down here at the bottom. We would call it like our objective summary. And their objective summary, like I just said, would just have, this is what this is about, and this is how it creates that meaning. Like the author, so it would be something like, and I would give them some sentence stems. This article or this piece is about blah, blah, blah. the author creates this meaning by blah, blah, blah. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about some common roadblocks to our learning, and then what does mastery look like of these skills in 9th or 10th grade. So essentially, some roadblocks to learning are going to be varied reading levels. If I have students who are like really, really strong readers, they're going to zip through something a lot faster than somebody that is a struggling reader or is just not quite as fast, and their vocabulary isn't as strong as some of the other students. And I do have that. I have classes of 40, and so I have a very wide range of reading and writing abilities in here, and that's fine because it makes for some great conversations. What I would do is, if it's the very first time we're doing anything like this, I would do one all class text. Everybody's doing the same thing. So I would have the reading level be right on par with 9th or with 10th grade. Like I wouldn't have an 11th grade text. I wouldn't have a 7th or 8th grade text. I would have it right on level. And then my students who are struggling, I might give it to them the day before so they can preview, or I might even give them an audio version of it. There are some really great resources out there. Commonlit.org is like my favorite thing ever. Newsella is another one that they have articles and this sort of stuff. They have both fiction and nonfiction on both of those services, both of those sites, but they also have audio, like it'll read it for them. And like, a lot of our computer programs, I'm referencing my computer, will have like text-to-speech sorts of applications. So I would absolutely do that. The key there is to give it to them ahead of time so that they can preview it, so they can listen through it, so that they are ready and there's no apprehension of, well, what if I don't understand? Because they've already had a key into it. That is my #1 tip, actually, for making sure that struggling readers, especially with expository text with nonfiction, it can be hard when you're not like getting to know a character, right? It's just a short little article and it's really packed with information and packed with facts. That is like the biggest roadblock, I would say, to learning. I do like that chunking it up like this keeps it so that students aren't going to get lost. If it's a short enough text and you've chunked it up with with numbering the different paragraphs, they should be pretty good. And students will be able to like stay on track as you're going through this whole activity. Mastery for this skill in 9th and 10th grade is being able to, on like an exam, give a student a text and say you can write on it in any way that you need to, but here are your set of text-dependent questions. And those questions are addressing things like, what is the central idea? And then questions about like how the author uses words and phrasing and different sorts of tactics to create that meaning. Those text-dependent questions that have normally like multiple choice answers, but that are quite difficult. If a student knows how to mark up a text and how to create meaning and how to analyze by themselves, because we have done I do, think aloud, you do together, we all do, practice enough times, that mastery will come through where they can make the marks that they need to make, and they'll be able to answer questions with confidence and correctly. So another question that we are all kind of addressing with our lessons is, how do I differentiate for struggling learners? So I've already kind of touched on this a little bit of how to make this text more accessible if I have like struggling readers. But if I have students who doing this kind of thing are just not quite getting it, I like to make sure that I pair them with somebody who is quite a bit stronger, and also have them sitting around other students who might have similar troubles so that they can help each other work through it. The thing that I like to be careful of is to make sure that it's not just like one struggling reader in a sea of like three, like like a table of like 3 strong readers, because then they're gonna feel like the odd person out. I wanna make sure that there is somebody who is close enough to their level where they can work together to try and figure it out. Because oftentimes I have found it is not that they just don't get it, it's that they don't know how to get it yet, or they don't think that they get it yet. Like they just don't have that confidence in their own abilities to understand something. So they think that they're gonna just like let go. I like to mix a good group. That's why I like groups so much. Pairs are great, but I like groups of 3 and 4, because the more voices that you have, the more varying of levels in the gray area that's there, and students really help each other make some discoveries. And then the last thing is, what would I like kids coming into my grade to know? So I want them to know that yes, going into high school is a big, huge social jump, but it is also an academic jump. And I know that our middle school teachers and our middle school faculty and staff really do prepare students for the social jump and for like the academic workload. But I think the shock that I often see, and I don't know how much of this is really preventable, I think a lot of it is just their maturity. The shock that I see when they come into 9th grade especially is of what they are learning. Like, wait a minute, I have to like annotate a text all by myself. Yes, you are 14, 15 years old. You are more than capable of that. So it's like, I want them to know that all of the things that they have done elementary through middle school, they don't just stop. They don't just go away. We actually take all of those skills and we build on them at a very rapid pace. And that willful rejection of prior knowledge that students often have like carried over from summer to fall just really can't happen. Like you have to hold on to it. You have to keep reading, and reading isn't going to go away, and writing and thinking aren't going to go away. And the things that we're working on now are going to help you in all of your classes for the future. So this is less of a really specific content thing that I want them to know and more of like a mindset thing. Don't forget all the stuff that your amazing teachers in middle school taught you. Remember it. Build upon your knowledge. Let's keep going together. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for stopping by with me today and talking about just what this looks like at a high school level. If you've not already watched Darren and Fernanda's videos, make sure that you do so. If nothing else, so that you can see just really how similar all of our students truly are. I mean, I always get questions, especially from my friends who don't teach or who teach elementary, like, how do you deal with the big kids? Quite frankly, they're just kids. Like, big kids are just like the little kids. They just have different needs, but like not really. Like, I'm not necessarily going to be helping one of my 9th graders tie their shoe, but I am totally going to be help them like pick themselves up by their bootstraps after they got their heart broken by a friend who said something really mean, not at recess, but at break, you know? So it's like it's really not that different. They're just kids and they're just people and they just need to learn and they need love, and there you go. So until we meet again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out the other videos in this collaboration. I hope that we do many more collaborations like this because I think it's so interesting, and I think it's so useful to both seasoned and brand new teachers alike and everybody in between. We can all use a little bit of perspective and really thinking through things like, what do I need to make sure students know before they get here? And what does mastery truly look like? It's things that we don't always articulate. We know we have in our heads, but we're not always openly talking about and always writing down and always saying in a very direct way. So it's important to talk about things and to kind of go back to our roots of like, what are our objectives? What are the standards? And what does it look like when we know that they have really achieved this? Yeah, so thank you again for watching. And if you've not already subscribed, take a second to do so, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.